I was the definition of someone who had just enough skill to think they knew what they were doing, but not enough results to prove any of it. I had a real technical background. Like, I actually finished a proper IT apprenticeship, application development, the kind of thing where people go, oh, nice, that's a real career. And I still could not make a single euro online. Not consistent, not reliably, not in a way that felt like it was going anywhere. For 3 years, I tried everything I could, and I'm going to tell you exactly what those things were in a second, because I want you to understand that this isn't one of those stories where the guy was just lazy or didn't know anything. I knew stuff. I had actual technical skill, and I still fail over and over and over again. But here's the thing. About 3 months ago, something finally clicked, and I made over 1,000 euros in the first 10 days after monetization from YouTube Shorts, a faceless voiceover channel. No face cam, no TikTok cross-posting, no sponsorships, no course I was selling, no community I was charging for, just AdSense, just the platform paying me directly because people were watching what I made. And I'm sitting here now making over 2,000 euros per month, and it's growing. And I know that might not sound like some crazy life-changing number to you, but I'm going to explain to you exactly what that number meant to me after 3 years of making nothing, because it wasn't about the money, it was about the proof that I wasn't delusional, proof that the 3 years weren't wasted, proof that something I built with 0 followers, 0 audience, 0 connections actually worked. And if you're someone who's tried a bunch of stuff online and nothing has stuck, or you feel like you're just spinning your wheels and watching other people get results while you're still sitting there at 0, I want you to stay with here, because this is going to be real. I'm not going to dress this up. I'm going to tell you exactly what I tried, exactly why it failed, exactly what changed, and exactly what I'm doing now. So let's go back to the beginning. When I finished my apprenticeship, I had this moment of clarity where I thought, okay, I have a real skill now. I know how to build software. I know how systems work. I can use this. And in theory, that was true. But what I actually did with that was I tried to sell websites. And I know that sounds like a reasonable idea. You have a technical skill. You find small businesses that don't have good websites. You offer to build them something bad, simple enough, right? But here's what happened. I would spend hours putting together proposals. I'd research local businesses. I'd mock things up. I'd send messages. And I would either get ignored, get told they already had someone, get told they couldn't afford it, or get told they'd think about it and then never hear from them again. And the few times I did actually get a project, it took so long to negotiate, so long to deliver, so long to get paid that by the time it was done, I'd made maybe a few hundred euros and burned 3 weeks doing it. That's not a business. That's just freelancing badly. And the worst part was I kept thinking, maybe I'm just not pitching right. Maybe I need to learn sales better. So I went looking for help. And that brings me to failure number 2. I bought a course, and I want to be specific about this because I think this is something a lot of people have experienced. I paid real money for this thing. It was marketed as this proprietary method for selling services online, some secret framework that only successful people were using. And I sat down to go through it, and within the first 2 modules, I realized what this so-called secret method was. It was the AIDA model: attention, interest, desire, action. If you don't know what that is, it's one of the oldest marketing frameworks in existence. It was literally developed in the 1800s. You can look it up on Wikipedia for free right now. This person had just repackaged it with their own branding and sold it to me for money I didn't really have. And that was the moment I started to genuinely mistrust the online education space, because it's not that the information was wrong, AIDA works fine, but I paid for something that was presented as this exclusive insider knowledge that turns out was just a rebrand of something that's been public domain for over 100 years. So I stopped buying courses. But I didn't stop trying, which unfortunately meant I moved on to mistake number 3, crypto, and more specifically meme coins. And I know how this sounds, I know, but you have to understand the context. It was the period where crypto was absolutely everywhere. Everyone had a story about turning a small amount some massive, and I got pulled into this Telegram group where people were sharing token calls, specific coins they were convinced were about to explode, and the group seemed legitimate. There were charts, there were analyses, there were people posting screenshots of gains, and I believed it. I bought in multiple times, and every single time the pattern was the same. The coin would pump a little, people in the group would go crazy, and then it would absolutely crater, and the people at the top of that pump, the ones running the group, the ones posting those screenshots, they had already sold on the way up while the rest of us were still buying. I wasn't investing. I was being farmed. I lost money. I didn't have to lose on speculation dressed up as analysis. And the thing that makes this feel even worse in hindsight is that I had a technical background. I understood how blockchain works in a basic sense. I wasn't completely naive, but it didn't matter because the scam isn't about being smart. smart or not smart. It's about being desperate to find something that works and letting that desperation override your judgment. And I was desperate. I was trying everything and nothing was working. And that makes you vulnerable to anyone who presents a shortcut with enough confidence. But I kept going because I still believed that something online had to work for me. So I tried one more thing: trading. Real trading. Charts, technical analysis, candlestick patterns, support and resistance levels, the whole thing. I spent months on this. I watched hours of content. I practiced on paper trading accounts. I learned the terminology and I made absolutely. Not because trading doesn't work for anyone. I'm sure there are people who are genuinely good at it, but because trading is a skill that takes years to develop to the point where it's reliably profitable. And I was treating it like something I could pick up in a few months and immediately turn into income. And the market doesn't care how hard you study. The market doesn't reward effort. The market rewards edge. And I didn't have an edge. I had pattern recognition that I thought was analysis, but was probably just noise. So after 3 years of trying to sell websites, getting burned by a rebadged marketing textbook, losing money in Telegram pump groups, and spending months staring at charts that told me nothing useful, I was sitting there with a technical background I was proud of and an online income track record that was basically zero. And that's a hard place to be because the people around me had normal answers when someone asked what they were doing. They had jobs with titles and salaries and clear trajectories. And every time that question came up for me, I was either lying by omission or explaining something that made people look at me like I was either deluded or wasting time. And I genuinely didn't know which one I was. So here is where but/therefore kicks in. I had failed at every method I tried, but I still believed that content creation was somewhere in the answer. Therefore, I started watching what was actually getting views on YouTube. Not looking for a guru to tell me what to work, just watching, paying attention. And what I kept coming back to was shorts, short form video, faceless channels, voiceover content, and specifically I kept noticing that certain niches were getting massive view count with really basic product. No face, no expensive equipment, just a voiceover, some visuals, a clear structure, and I started wondering if I could reverse engineer what those channels were doing, not copy them. Actually understand why specific videos work, what structure they used in the first 10 seconds, what the pacing felt like, what made you watch to the end instead of swiping away. And the more I studied it, the more I started to see a pattern. So I picked a niche: history content, specifically the kind of history stories that feel dramatic and unbelievable but are completely real. And I started making videos. That's it. That's the whole decision. I just started. And here's what happened next. The first videos I made were bad. I know that sounds like the part of every story where someone says their first attempt wasn't great, but I want to be specific because I think the specifics matter. The early videos weren't bad because I didn't understand the niche or because the production was terrible. They were bad because I hadn't yet calibrated what actually made someone stop scrolling. I understood the topic, I understood how to write, but I didn't yet understand the specific mechanics of why a short either holds attention or loses it in the first 2 seconds. And that is a different skill. It's not writing, it's not research. It's a specific understanding of a specific platform's specific user behavior. And I didn't have that yet. But here's the key thing. Every time a video didn't perform, I found out the next day. Not the next year, not the next quarter, the next day. Because shorts gives you signal fast, really fast. And the metric I started paying attention to more than anything else was VVSA, view velocity and swipe away rate. Basically, of the people who the algorithm showed my video to, what percentage actually watched it versus immediately swiped away. And I started to understand that 80% or above was the threshold. If you're holding 80% of the people the algorithm throws your video at, it starts to think, okay, this thing is worth showing to more people. Below that, and you're invisible. Not because the video was bad in some general sense, but because it wasn't optimized for that specific micro decision someone makes in the first 1 or 2 seconds on the platform. And this is where I want to be really honest about what the learning process actually looked like. Because it wasn't some clean progression where each video was better than the last. It was messy. It was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'd figure out something about hooks and my retention would improve, and then I'd post a video that flopped for a completely different reason. And then I'd have to figure out that new variable. And then something about pacing would click and I'd see an improvement, and then something about the ending would fall apart. And I'd have to work on that. Every video was a test and every result was data. And I know that sounds like I was very calm and systematic about it, but I wasn't always. There were stretches where I'd post 3 or 4 videos and all of them would land below the threshold, and I'd start to wonder if I was missing something fundamental. I even took about a half-month break at one point. Life got in the way, things came up, and I just stopped posting for a couple of weeks. And when I came back, I was half convinced I'd lost momentum or that I'd need to start over somehow. But I hadn't. The channel was still there. The work I'd already put in was still there, and I just kept going. And over the course of roughly 80 videos, something shifted. The channel started to grow in a way that felt different. Views were coming in on newer videos faster. The algorithm was starting to recommend older videos to new viewers, and I realized I was getting close to the monetization requirement. And here's the part I want to tell you about, because this is actually the center of the whole story. I hit monetization, and the first 10 days after that, I made over €1,000 just from AdSense, just from the platform paying me because people were watching. And I want to tell you what that felt like, not in a hype way, in an honest way, because the number itself, €1,000 in 10 days, that's real money, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But that's not what made it feel the way it did. What made it feel the way it did was what it meant in context. I had been trying for 3 years. 3 years of actually putting in effort, not half-hearted attempts, not dipping my toe in and walking away. I mean, real sustained effort across multiple different methods. And I had exactly zero online income to show for it. And everyone around me was watching, not in a malicious way, just in the way that people naturally observe when someone they know is doing something that doesn't look like it's working. And there's this quiet, patient, well-meaning pressure that builds up when the people around you have normal, stable things going on. And you're 3 years into trying something that nobody around you fully understands and hasn't produced anything. And when that first €1,000 came in, I didn't feel like celebrating. I mean, I did a little bit, but mostly I just felt this enormous wave of relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years, and I finally exhaled. Proof, finally actual proof that I wasn't wasting my time, that the pattern recognition I was developing was real, that the hours I was putting into studying what worked in the niche and applying that understanding to original content was actually a viable path, that the thing I'd been betting on was not a delusion. And I now make over €2,000 per month, and it's early. I want to be completely clear about that. This is not a video where I'm looking back from some massive established success story. I'm in the beginning, I'm documenting this in real time, but that's actually the whole point, because I think there's something valuable about someone who just broke through telling you what the breakthrough actually looked like, instead of someone who broke through years ago and has retrofitted the story into something cleaner and more inspiring than it actually was. So let me tell you what I actually think made this work when nothing else did. And this is the part that I think about a lot, because I genuinely believe it's the core insight and not something I came up with to make myself sound smarter in hindsight. Every other method I tried punished me for being a beginner. Selling websites as a beginner means clients can smell that you don't have a track record and they either pass or lowball you. Buying courses as a beginner means you have no frame of reference to evaluate whether what you're being sold is actually good or just presented well. Trading as a beginner means the market will take your money while you learn at a pace that's completely indifferent to how hard you're trying. These methods have a high cost of failure when you don't know what you're doing yet. And as a beginner, by definition, you don't know what you're doing yet. YouTube Shorts was different. Not because it was easy, it wasn't, but because the cost of being wrong was only time. I make a video, I find out tomorrow if it worked. I lose an hour if it didn't, I make another one. The feedback loop is short enough that you can actually learn from it in real time, and you don't need a client to say, you don't need a product to ship, you don't need capital to deploy. You need a phone or a basic setup, a niche you're willing to study, and the willingness to post and learn from what the data tells you. That's it. That's the whole barrier to end. And I'm not saying it's without frustration. There will be stretches where nothing seems to be working and you can't figure out why. There will be videos you're proud of that get no traction, and videos you made quickly that somehow perform. The platform has its own logic and learning. That logic takes real reps, but the reps are available to you every single day, as many times as you want, with no external gatekeeper deciding whether you get to try today. And here's the thing I want to address, because I know someone watching this is thinking it. The thing I hear the most is that shorts don't make real money, that the RPM is too low, that you need millions of views to see anything meaningful. And I want to push back on this because I think it misunderstands how to think about the early stage. Yes, the RPM on shorts is lower than long form. Yes, you need meaningful view volume to see meaningful income, but when you're starting from zero, the question isn't which platform has the highest RPM. The question is which platform gives you the fastest feedback loop to actually develop the skill of making content people want to watch. And shorts is the answer to that question, because you can post daily if you want to, because you find out quickly if something is working, because the barrier to making a short is lower than the barrier to making a 10-minute video, which means you can run more experiments in less time, which means you learn faster. And when you have enough videos that are hitting the threshold, when you have enough content that the algorithm is actively recommending, the view volume compound and the income compound pounds with it. I'm not at the top of this yet. I'm in the middle of building it, but the direction is clear and the mechanism is real. So let me tell you what the actual method looks like, because I don't want this to be a story video that's all motivation and no actionable content. The way I approach this is straightforward, but it requires real work. I start by studying what already works in my niche, not to copy it, to understand the pattern behind it. What is the structure of the videos that are getting hundreds of thousands of views? What is the hook doing in the first 2 seconds? Is it creating a question in the viewer's mind? Is it establishing a tension that needs to be resolved? Is it presenting a fact that seems possible? And then I look at the pace. How long does the setup take before payoff? Where does the energy peak? What does the ending do? Does it resolve cleanly, or does it leave something open? I'm not reverse engineering the content. I'm reverse engineering the underlying logic of why that content holds attention. And then I take that understanding and I apply it to original material. My own research, my own framing, my own voiceover. The content is entirely mine. The structural understanding of what makes it perform came from studying the niche seriously. That is a completely replicable approach. You don't need to be in history. You don't need to be faceless. You need to pick a niche. Study what performs in it, understand why it performed, and apply that understanding to original content you make consistently. And then you need to track the right metric. For me, that's VVSA. Not raw views, not subscribers. The ratio of people who see the video and actually watch it versus immediately swipe away. Because that ratio tells you whether the algorithm is going to push the video further or bury it. 80% or above is the signal you want. Below that, you're learning something about why people left. And that's data. Use it. Here's what I want to leave you with, because I think the practical stuff matters, but the thing underneath it matters more. I spent 3 years being the person with a real technical background who couldn't make a euro online. I was the person who had a response to the question of, what are you doing that was technically true but never quite felt like enough? I was the person watching other people figure it out while I kept trying things that didn't work. And I want you to know that those 3 years are not a story about failure. They're a story about finding the method that matched the constraints I was actually operating under. Because every method I tried before this one was structurally bad for a beginner with no audience and no capital and no existing track record. And YouTube Shorts is structurally good for exactly that person. Low barrier to entry, fast feedback loop, no gatekeeper, no capital required, just reps and learn. And if you're the person right now who has tried stuff and nothing has worked, and you're starting to wonder if you're just not cut out for this, I want you to think about something. The thing that wasn't working probably wasn't you. It was probably the method being a bad match for where you actually are right now. Most methods for making money online are designed to make money for the person teaching them, not for the person who's starting from zero. YouTube Shorts doesn't care who teaches it to you. The platform pays you based on whether people watch what you make. Full stop. You can't buy your way in. You can't fake your way to the metric. You have to actually make things that people want to watch. And when you do, it pays you. That's the deal. And that deal is available to you right now. Not after you finish a course, not after you reach some arbitrary level of readiness. Right now, you can open your phone, pick a niche you're willing to study seriously, spend a week understanding what performs in that niche and why, and post your first video. And you'll find out tomorrow if it worked, and if it didn't, you'll make another one. And somewhere in those reps, you will start to figure out the pattern. I can tell you that from having lived, not as someone looking back from some mountain, as someone who's still on the climb and can see where the trail goes from here. Most people reading this will think about starting. Don't be most people. The next 3 months are going to pass whether you post anything or not. So that's where I am. That's what I've been building. I'm going to keep documenting this as it grows. Keep being honest about what's working and what isn't, and keep showing you the real numbers as they come in. Drop a comment if any part of this story hit close to home. I read them, and we'll talk again very soon. Peace.